Yes, welcome everyone to another exciting football conversation that we're going to have, I suppose, on this podcast. So, here's the plan for today. We're going to recap some interesting games that we saw in week 1, such as the Titans and Browns, Eagles, Redskins, Rams, Panthers, Chargers, Colts, Saints, Texans, and of course this week's Thursday night football game. We're going to talk about the Giants game because I'm a Giants fan. We'll call that the Big Blue recap. It was a complete debacle on defense, as we all know. They gave up 5 touchdowns against Dak Prescott, making him look like a freaking elite quarterback. We'll talk about if the Giants should start Daniel Jones. We'll talk about how much of a disastrous play caller and coach Pat Shurmur was week 1. Hopefully he can improve. We're going to talk a little bit about this idea I have called the Patriots Pyramid, and why I think going to the Super Bowl is going to be easier than ever for them. Hate to say it, but it's true. We're going to talk a little bit about the tanking Dolphins and their players requesting trades, including Minkah Fitzpatrick. We're going to talk about all that kind of stuff with the Dolphins and how much of a wreck they are. And finally, we'll end it with some Week 2 predictions against the spread, straight up, that whole sort of thing. And there you go. So let us begin by recapping some interesting Week 1 games, shall we? Now first we got the Titans and Browns, and I was buying into the hype in this game, and really I shouldn't have. I still should have been pretty confident in taking the Browns straight up, even though they lost by 30, because, they're playing at home and they got some hype, but 5.5 against a good team against Tennessee, I should have definitely taken the Titans against the spread there. That was a bad idea. It was a really, really bad idea. I should have trusted the Titans to cover that spread, even if I trusted the Browns to win. But hey, the Browns lost. They lost 43-13. If that's not a wake-up call, I don't know what is. Browns had 18 penalties. 18, that is an insane amount. You have to start to wonder if Freddie Kitchens is head coaching material, because that is a really undisciplined team. If they have 18 penalties. You had their offensive tackle, Greg Robinson, kicking a guy in the face. It's just ridiculous. I mean, this Browns team is young. We know that. We know they're a little rough around the edges when it comes to that. They might not be the most disciplined team, but 18 penalties. Come on. This isn't the kind of thing that beats New England, okay? You can't talk about Super Bowls aspirations when you have 18 penalties. You can't really talk about Super Bowl aspirations in general when your team has been disastrous the past few years, although they weren't as bad last year because of Baker Mayfield and everything. But beat a winning team. Beat a team like the Titans. Beat a team like the Steelers. And then we'll start to take you more seriously. And speaking of the Titans, I think they're legit. I really do. I think they're definitely a playoff contender. I think they've got a great shot of winning this AFC South. It'll probably be between them and the Texans. Marcus Mariota looked good in this game. Their defense, of course, looks great. They are a well-coached team. I think Mike Vrabel will actually work. I mean, he was from the Patriots, but he wasn't a Patriots coach before he went there, and we all know how Patriots, sort of offensive and defensive coordinators do with other teams. But I think Vrabel has brought a good attitude to Tennessee. They have had a winning record 3 years in a row, and I would bet that they would make the playoffs this year, the Titans. Anyway, on to Eagles-Redskins. Now, the Redskins had a 17-0 lead early on. And basically, as a Giants fan, I deluded myself into thinking that the NFC East little brothers would win early on. And what a win it would have been. The Redskins going on the road to beat the Eagles, the Giants going on the road to beat the Cowboys. It wasn't going to happen. For whatever reason, I'll tell you this, the Eagles tend to struggle early on in games sometimes. They have against the Giants. The Eagles had a 19-3 deficit against the Giants last year in a game, and they came back and win. Peterson has led them to come back and win. Doug Peterson, he just leads the teams on comeback wins, That's just how it is. They get off to a rough start sometimes. You have EDP 445, the Eagles fans say the game's over. But I think he's got to realize at some point that just the way the Eagles are, they sometimes get off to these rough starts, they make the halftime adjustments, and they go on to win the game. I was dead accurate about the Redskins covering the spread, though. They were 9.5-point underdogs. I said that's too much. I said it will be about that much late in the game, which it was 31-20, but they scored garbage point touchdown exactly as I said they would, and they covered the spread. So there you go. I was right about that. Anyway, on to the Rams and Carolina Panthers. So I think the big narrative about this game will be how the lack of preseason woes does not apply to Sean McVay, the guy who sort of invented, or I suppose popularized, just resting your starters in the preseason. Resting the starters is, I guess, proven to keep them healthy, but sometimes, like you look at that Bears-Packers game, the offenses look rusty, but not the Rams. They put up 30 points against the Panthers. And I was basically dead right about the point spread in this one, too. I said the Rams were 2-point favorites. I said that basically means they'll win by a field goal and they'll still cover. They won by exactly the field goal. The Panthers' young offense, I think, is still promising with DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, and especially Christian McCaffrey. We'll talk more about that, though, when we get to the Thursday night recap, which, again, feature the Panthers, who, again, lost. But like I said, we'll talk about that. The Rams, they're still a contender in this NFC. I still think they'll win the NFC West. They look pretty unstoppable, I'm not going to lie. Well, they look stoppable, but they're going to make the playoffs. Let's just say that. Chargers and Colts. Adam Vinatieri. I don't know what's happened with him because in that AFC divisional round game against the Chiefs, he looked rough. He missed some kicks. He looked rough, then he missed some kicks in this game. He honestly cost the Colts the game. They actually were going to win this one. I said the Colts would cover. They did. It was 6.5 points spread. They lost by 6 with a touchdown overtime, which still means they covered if they lost by 6. And they were 6.5-point underdogs. But they should have won this game. They should have honestly won it because Vinatieri pretty much cost him the Colts this game. The Jets kicker also cost their team this game this week. And you start to wonder, you don't want kickers costing your team a game, especially, I'm sure this happened a lot more in the NFL back then as kickers were less accurate. But in today's day and age, with social media just mocking you if, oh, you should have won this game, but, you know, your freaking kicker, Cody Parkey, Blair Walsh or whatever, cost you. It just looks bad. It really does. So you got to start to wonder if Vinatieri's done. The Colts still have confidence in him. It is still week 1, but the man is 46 years old. You start to wonder if the ageless wonder isn't really much of a wonder anymore. Meanwhile, in the world of kickers, and I know it's interesting that this is what I'm talking about, but the Chargers kicker, actually the punter, filling in as a kicker, delivered a clutch 40-yard field goal in this Chargers-Colts game, which actually helped them win it. So that is pretty interesting. Like I said, the Colts, I thought they'd be competitive in this game. They were, and like I said, if Vinatieri wasn't missing those kicks, they probably would have won it. I think they'll be competitive under Jacoby Brissett. They might even sneak into the playoffs. I don't think they will, but there's a chance. The Colts are a well-coached team. They have a good roster. This is not a team built to tank like the Dolphins. The Colts are going to probably win at least 5 or 6 games this year, if not more. Anyway, on to the Monday Night Football game, which was the Saints and Texans, and what a great game this was. Now, everyone's pissed about the Texans' defense on that last drive because Texans were leading 28-27. The Saints were getting near field goal range, and the Texans' defense was playing a prevent defense. So Breeze had a nice little short pass that set the kicker up, Will Lutz, with a 56-yard field goal, or 58, I think it might have been, and he made it. But here's what I'm really pissed about. The Texans, they were down. They scored a touchdown. In 2 plays, 75 yards, just 2 big strikes from Deshaun Watson. I'd say, why would you be that quick on the drive? You're giving Breeze too much time, 35 seconds in a timeout. That's too much time for him. That's too much time for him to get the troops down the field and kick a long field goal. But like I said, though, this was still such a great game. I caught the end of it. It was an amazing game to watch. I felt bad for Deshaun Watson, though. I really did. You have to feel bad for him because he played so great in this game, yet his offensive line is garbage. The defense couldn't make a clutch stop at the end, and it's sad. It's really sad for Deshaun Watson. I still think the Texans have a great shot at making the playoffs, but if they do, it's going to be because of Deshaun Watson. People are saying he's the next Andrew Luck. You can't help but think about that. You can't help but think about that because they don't have an offensive line that protected him. I mean, I think part of the reason the Texans traded for Laramie Tunsil was because they looked at Andrew Luck's retirement and thought, crap, if we don't give this guy an O-line, he might do the same thing in like 5 years. So it's rough for the Texans. It's a rough loss, but I still think they'll definitely be a playoff contender. in spite of their terrible O-line, they'll still contend for the postseason. And you look at the New Orleans Saints. They are still Super Bowl contenders, though I was right about them just scraping by in this game. I predicted the final score as 31-30 Saints. It was 30-28, so I was pretty much almost exactly right. So I'm talking about the games, of course, that I was right in because, I like to do that, but I was definitely wrong in a lot of games too. But, sometimes I'm a little prophetic and sometimes I'm a little pathetic. Anyway, Thursday night recap. You got to wonder, are the Carolina Panthers screwed at 0-2? The 2 home losses is not promising, even if one was to the Rams. Now, you lost this one to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I still think Carolina can be a playoff team. I'm not bailing on them yet. The next game is at Arizona, though. You look at that you got to win that game. You got to win that game against the Cardinals. Cardinals aren't going to be a great team this year. You got to win that game for Carolina to get things rolling because 0-2 teams do not typically make the playoffs. Sometimes they do. You look at the Texans last year. You look at my New York Giants back in 2007. That Super Bowl run, they started off 0-2, but it's not a good start, especially when both of those losses, like I said, are at home. This one against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team no one really expected to be that great. But hey, this is a big win for Tampa. This is the kind of game a losing team like them normally drops. If you're looking, Tampa Bay Buccaneers have not made the playoffs since 2007, okay? They have been a losing team. They've had a losing culture. You don't win road games against your division rivals if you're a losing team. And yet, here you go. They got a nice early win on the road against Carolina, and the next game is at home against my Giants, and that could easily propel you to 2-1. I am not delusional about the Giants. I'm telling you, they probably do have the better chance of winning that game if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Getting off to a 2-1 start, not bad at all, that's for sure. It is now time for the Big Blue recap. Me recapping the disaster that was the Giants' road opener to the Dallas Cowboys, and when is it not a road opener to the Dallas Cowboys? I'm starting to think about it this way. The Giants always play Dallas week 1 because it gets the great ratings. It gets the great ratings because everyone loves the Giants-Cowboys rivalry, even if it's a little lopsided like it is now. And it is lopsided because the Cowboys are beating the crap out of us because we suck. That's just how it is. But everyone likes that rivalry, but why is it always got to be at Jerry World week 1? You think about this, no team wants to start off their season with a loss. And it just makes it more likely that the Giants are going to lose if they have to play the Cowboys on the road in week 1. So, because of that, I'm starting to wonder, why does the NFL never give the Giants a week 1 home game against Dallas? I'm just saying. But anyway, to start this recap, let's talk a little bit about Pat Shurmur, our head coach, who really belongs more as an offensive coordinator. Pat Shurmur was a moron for not handing the ball off to Saquon Barkley more in the second quarter. In partial defense of him, though, the reason Barkley's overall carries were so, low was because the Giants had to pass in the second half to catch up because their defense was already giving up a bunch of stuff. That's what they had to do. The Giants had to pass. Eli Manning had to carry us to a win, which that's not a good thing to say the least. But when you're down 21-10, when you're down by those multiple scores, you got to pass. You can't just keep running it to Barkley because that's not going to. I mean, it could get you a lot of yards, but running is still the more conservative thing to do, obviously. So Giants had to pass, so that is why Barkley's runs were so low. But still, in the second quarter, when that game is still close, that's inexcusable. Not running it to him on those 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 plays. Instead, having Eli Manning, a 38-year-old quarterback, roll out. It's ridiculous. You got to hand it off to Barkley there. And those aren't the only problems I have with Shurmur. There was other problems. 21-7, down early in the first half. You're down 21-7. And what do? You have a 60-yard field goal set up with Aldrick Rosas. And Aldrick Rosas is one of the best kickers in the NFL. We know about his leg. We know how awesome he is. And instead of the field goal, you go for the Hail Mary. Let me tell you this. You're not getting that Hail Mary. They didn't get it. Of course they didn't get it. I get it. You want to be aggressive there, but you're not getting that Hail Mary with Eli Manning. And, That's just not likely. Aaron Rodgers, that's an Aaron Rodgers thing. That's not an Eli Manning thing now. You should have had Rosas kick that field goal and take the 3 points because I think he would have been able to get those 3 points, even if it was from like 60 yards out. I wouldn't doubt Rosas there. I really wouldn't. And it's one other thing I had a problem with Shurmur. He was punting in the fourth quarter when we were down by like 3 or 4 scores. You're basically surrendering the game. This is just capitulation. It's surrendering. You go for it. I mean, I tell you what, we had a 99.9% chance of losing there. I get it. But punting there basically makes it a 100% chance of losing, okay? You don't want to just surrender like that. It's just not what you do. You shouldn't be able to do that as an NFL head coach. Now, Shurmur may not be the Giants' solution at coach. I've criticized him plenty here, as you can see. But I do think he's not as bad as Ben McAdoo. Shurmur cares about his players. He gets more fired up. You see him on the sidelines when the refs are making shitty calls. He was getting fired up. He has passion. He cares about his team. He cares about his players. But that still doesn't make him a great head coach. In fact, he's not a good head coach. Let's just be honest with ourselves here, Giants fans. We might be looking at another coach by the end of the year. We might be looking for another coach. We might be looking for another general manager because I get it, we're rebuilding, but it's not a good rebuild. It's definitely not a good rebuild. And a big reason for that is because this defense sucks and it's worse than I thought it was. No pass rush, no pass protection, or no, what's that word I'm looking for? Secondary was terrible. You get what I mean. It was worse than I thought it would be. I knew this secondary would be a little rough. You have a lot of youth and inexperience out there. You have a 35-year-old Antoine Bethea showing his age out there getting burnt. And like I said, a bunch of inexperience after that. Just a bunch of young guys that looked lost. They looked like they didn't know what they were doing. You watch that game and you look at Dak Prescott before the snap got off and the Dallas offense was all set. And the Giants defense was just moving around. They had no idea what they were doing. Their body language was like, what am I doing out here? I don't know. They looked confused. They looked lost. And you can't really pin this on Shurmur as much because Shurmur isn't an offensive guy, or isn't a defensive guy, I should say. This is on James Betcher, the defensive coordinator, for not having his defense prepared, not having his defense ready to play against Dallas. And like I said, this Dallas offense is not a bad offense at all. You're playing them on the road. I get it. You're probably not going to have an amazing performance against them. But to give up 5 touchdowns like that, to give up wide open touchdowns where the secondary isn't even contesting Amari Cooper or Michael Gallup or Ezekiel Elliott or whatever. You're not even contesting these plays. They're just wide open. What you going to do? You're making Dak look like an elite quarterback. That's not what he is. He's not an elite quarterback, but you made him look like one. This will probably help get Dak his $40 million. Let's not lie here. But come on. This defense blowed. And there was no pass rush either. Gettleman should have gotten someone in the secondary this offseason besides like a 35-year-old Antoine Bethea. And he should have gotten someone besides, who's that guy I'm looking for? Marcus Golden, who had like one great season as a pass rusher and then nothing after that, just injuries. You have to make improvements besides these guys, besides an ancient safety and a pass rusher who had one good season. That's what you got to do. This is why people were saying you had to take Josh Allen in the first round instead of Daniel Jones, because this team does not have any pass rushers. Justin Tuck, Osi Umenyiora, Jason Pierre-Paul, those days are gone. We don't have a damn pass. At least Olivier Vernon could kind of get after the passer, but he's gone now. We don't have a single good pass rusher on this team. Not one. We don't have a single good member of the secondary on this team. Not one. All old or inexperienced in the secondary. No good pass rushers. It's bad. But let's look on the bright side a little bit. The offensive line looks way better. Saquon had that amazing carry in the first quarter that got us to that touchdown. The offensive line is pass protecting a lot better for Eli. And let's be honest here. The Giants friggin' should have put up more points. They should have put up more points in 17. One of those touchdowns was garbage points. But they didn't go at 3 and out or anything like that over and over again. They had drives where they moved the ball down the field. Of course, some of those drives stalled because Pat Shurmur's a moron and the Giants couldn't get 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 conversions. But the Giants' offense did not look bad in this game. Eli Manning did not look bad in this game. The receivers did not look bad in this game. Tight end Evan Ingram did not look bad in this game. Saquon Barkley didn't look bad. Of course, when does he ever look bad? He always looks amazing. And the offensive line, they can block. Hallelujah, they can block. So you look at this offensive line in the future, and when we have Daniel Jones and not Eli Manning out there, you have some older pieces on there like Kevin Zeitler and Nate Solder, late 20s, early 30s, but you got some promising young pieces in there too, like Will Hernandez and John Halapio at center. You look at this offensive line as, for once, maybe not being a weakness of this team and maybe even a strength. I mean, you look at it like that. I think Dallas only got 1 sack on Eli all game. Eli had a pretty clean pocket a lot of the game. Not as clean as Dak Prescott's, that's for sure, but still not bad either. So, the question is, of course, should we bench Eli Manning? I mean, should we? And at this point, you look and say, well, the season's kind of lost anyway. We should. But that's not what the Giants are going to do. That's not what they're about. They're not going to bench Eli until the season really looks lost. Or until they have that ever so popular coach catchphrase, they give us the best chance to win. And Daniel Jones may very well give us the best chance to win, but that's up to the coaching staff, like I said, and I don't think they're really going to want to sit Eli until we're really out of it, like mathematically playoff-wise out of it. That's what the Giants are going to do, I think. But if we drop to 0-3, obviously we're not going to be mathematically out of it yet. But 0-3 and still starting Eli, think about what kind of message that sends to the fans. Think about it, even if Eli performs pretty well in those games, it's like, you're 0-3, come on, just put Jones in. So I'd say if we drop these next 2 games, be on the lookout. Daniel Jones could be starting. I don't think we're going to drop these next 2 games, but I wouldn't put it past him. I would not put it past this New York Giants team that looks bad. Anyway, before I wrap this up here, I just got to say, congrats to Dallas. They look like a contender, but let's see you face a defense that doesn't suck. Let's just say that. Let's talk about this thing called the Patriots Pyramid. The Patriots recently acquired Antonio Brown, and that's been making headlines. Of course, Antonio Brown is dealing with rape allegations, but I just want to not talk about Antonio Brown right now. Let's just not talk about it, because Antonio Brown is just full of drama. Let's talk about actual football stuff. Now, the Patriots. Everyone criticizes the Patriots because they've had a weak AFC East to deal with, which always makes them land in the playoffs. But the thing about the Patriots now is not only do they have a weak division, they have a weak conference. Think about it this way. The Patriots are a team, they don't have a dynasty, they have 2 dynasties. They have the one from 2001 to 04, and they have the one from 2014 to now. But in between those 2 dynasties, they faced much stiffer competition. Think about the teams of that 2005 to 2013-ish era. Think about those teams that were in the Super Bowl. You had the Ravens, the Steelers, the Colts, the Broncos. They'd always make things competitive with the Patriots. Not the Steelers, but when, one of those other 3 teams would be beating them, So you had those 4 teams that were consistent playoff contenders, consistent Super Bowl contenders during that era, and that is what stopped the Patriots. Also the New York Giants, but also those 4 teams were stopping the Patriots during those sort of gray years in the Brady-Belichick era. You had those 4 strong AFC teams that would stop the Patriots in the playoffs. But here's how I look at it now. The Patriots were in week 2, and I already think they have a 60% chance of winning the AFC because of their division. 60%. It is more likely than not that the Patriots will be in the Super Bowl. That's just how it is. It's because of their division. Next below the Patriots, I got the Chiefs. They have a 30% chance because it is less likely that they host the AFC Championship game because they play a stronger division. They play the Chargers twice a year. They could easily drop one of those games, if not both of them. That's just how it is. The Patriots have no excuse not to go 6-0 against their division this year. It's more bad than it's ever been because of the tanking Dolphins, because of Sam Darnold having mono, and let's face it, the Bills probably aren't going to be that great either. The Chiefs have a 30% chance. Less likely and even if they do host the AFC Championship game, even if they do host it, they could still lose. That's what happened last year. Patrick Mahomes could give Tom Brady some trouble. He could win in a shootout in that AFC Championship game, but I'm not counting on it. I'm really not counting on it. I'm saying 30% chance for the Chiefs. Then the 14 other AFC teams combined have a 10% chance, in my opinion, to make the Super Bowls. The Super Bowl. Bleh. And when I say the 14 other teams, I really only mean 6 of them. I mostly mean the Steelers because of their experience, because Ben Roethlisberger and Mike Tomlin have done it before. I'm talking about the Ravens because of their coaching, because they've always been a great defensive team, and maybe Lamar Jackson surprises us this year. I'm talking about the Browns, really the least of these 6 teams, but maybe their talent will somehow make them better than the Patriots for one game. I'm talking about the Titans because of their defense and because I like Mike Vrabel, the coach. I like what they're building there. I'm talking about the Texans mostly because of Deshaun Watson. And I'm talking about the Chargers because of their talent. Notice how none of these 6 teams are from the AFC East. None of them are. And they still have a very unlikely chance of winning the AFC. Not very likely at all. But the way I see it is they got to go on the road against New England because New England will probably have that first round bye because of their weak division they play in. And they will make Super Bowl only if they beat the Patriots on the road. That's the only way. And it's probably not going to happen. So let's talk about one of those weak teams that the Patriots play in that division. The team they'll be playing this week, the Miami Dolphins. They lost by 49 at home to open the year. You got to think about how demoralizing that is. You got to think that is why the players are requesting those trades. Now, the thing about a tanking team is their goal isn't to lose. You don't have a head coach giving a team a pregame speech saying, hey guys, we really got to suck in this one. We really got to get that number 1 draft pick. Of course not. Their goal isn't to lose, but they're built to lose. That's just how it is. It's unfortunate, but that's how it is. That's why you trade away Laramie Tunsil and Kenny Stills. You're built to lose. You're just built to lose for this year. Now, Brian Flores, their head coach, who was a linebackers coach for the New England Patriots, getting that head coaching job because, the Dolphins, they're a desperate team. No one really wanted to come there this offseason. So it's like, hey, Patriots linebacking coach, you get the job. Now, he says we're a good team. He has to know they're not. He knows they're a good team, as in, they're in the NFL, but, they're still the worst team. The worst team in the NFL is still a good football team. But the worst team in the NFL is the worst team in the NFL. He's not necessarily encouraging the players to lose, like I said. No coach would. But he knows it's not likely they're going to win very many games this year. I believe he might be overwhelmed managing this whole team. That's how it is when you're just the linebackers coach in New England. And you have these players requesting trades this early, like Minkah Fitzpatrick. Yikes. And Minkah is young. He's talented. He's one of the best players on this Dolphins team. But when you're selling away your best players, what kind of message does that send to your team? It'll probably send a message that says, hey, I want to trade too. If he's out, I'm out. This team is giving up and it's like week 1, week 2. That's ridiculous. And like I said, in terms of roster mismanagement, I haven't seen an obvious tank job. I haven't seen a more obvious tank job since Suck for Luck when the Colts did in 2011 when Peyton Manning was injured. Now it's tank for Tua. Tank for Tua Tagovailoa. You have Josh Rosen here, who supposedly could be your franchise quarterback, but his career already seems to be ruined by 2 hideously mismanaged teams in the Arizona Cardinals last year and now the Miami Dolphins this year. So one final comment on tanking. It has worked in baseball and basketball, but it is not proven track record so much in football. Sure, sucking for luck helped the Colts get to a few playoff games, basically. But did it really help them win a championship? Unfortunately, no, it did not. You look at Andrew Luck, he's retired. And after, that sort of downfall where Chris Ballard did a disastrous, well, not Chris Ballard, the guy before him, Ryan Grigson, did a disastrous job of building that roster, it just didn't work out. And yet, I think the Dolphins, tanking might work for them. You know why? They've been stuck in mediocrity the last 20 years. They've never really had a whole lot of top 5 draft picks, a lot of chances to grab a really good and talented player. You get this high draft position, you get the top pick in the first round, second round, you trade for more picks, all that kind of stuff. It might work. It might really work. You got to think about this from the Dolphins' point of view, because they've been stuck in this mediocrity the last 20 years. They never really make the playoffs other than that weird Wildcat year in '08 or a few years ago when Ryan Tannehill and Adam Gase just got in there to lose. The Dolphins don't make the playoffs. They're not a playoff team. They're one of these mediocre AFC East teams. They're never really terrible, though. But now that they're terrible, maybe things will work in the future. It's just how it is. So now it's time for my Week 2 NFL predictions to wrap up this week's podcast. I did okay last week straight up. I was 10-5-1. Of course, that one at the end was the Cardinals and Lions tying, so that doesn't really count. But I was a dreadful 6-10 against the spread. That is bad. I made some pretty accurate final score predictions about a few games, which I discussed earlier, but we are not here for that. Let's improve those against the spread picks. Let's make some better picks for week number 2. So let's start with a number that I really like here. Tennessee -3 at home against the Colts. You give me the Titans to cover here all day. Now, I know why this number might be a little lower. It's because the Colts are the Titans' boogeyman. But that is really only true with Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck is retired. The Titans are a better team now that Andrew Luck is, or the Titans have a better chance of beating the Colts now that Andrew Luck is gone. They're playing at home here. Definitely give me them to win by more than a field goal. As a matter of fact, give me the Titans to win 27-16. Chargers -2 at Detroit. You give me the Chargers to cover here. Detroit may be playing at home, but they couldn't even win against a significantly less talented Arizona team. This Chargers team is more talented. They will beat the Lions. They will beat them 24-20 and cover the spread. Giants +2 against the Bills. Give me the Giants to cover here. This is partially my hope as a fan that the Giants will win this game despite being 2-point underdogs, and I think they will win. The Giants' defense will look less bad against a less accurate quarterback. I think Shermer will have a better game plan. I have some confidence. They'll probably ruin it for me, but I have some confidence. Giants 28, Bills 24. Arizona +13 against Baltimore. You give me the Cards here to cover. The Ravens looked like a god squad last week, but it was against a team that I already discussed earlier that was tanking. The Cards got it together to force a tie. They looked bad in that game against the Lions early on, but they got it together in the fourth quarter. They forced a tie. They'll still lose here. The Cardinals will lose, but they'll keep it close. Baltimore will win 30-21, but I still like Arizona to cover that big 13-point spread. New England -19 against Miami. This is the Vegas consensus pick that I'm seeing. Patriots, 19-point favorites. I do not like picking lines that are that ridiculous, but I'm going to anyway. Now, this seems like a game that the Dolphins somehow win. The Patriots like to lose in Miami. They like to lose early on. Well, they don't like it, but that's what they do. And Fitzmagic season is always in September. But this Dolphins team is so bad that it just defies all of that. Give me the Patriots to win 35-14. Dallas -5.5 against Washington. I hate the Cowboys, but you got to be objective here. After last week's collapse, I trust the Skins to lose by a touchdown against Dallas. I trust them to lose 28-21 to be exact, even if they're playing on the road. Give me Dallas to cover that 5.5-point spread. Jacksonville +8.5 against Houston. Give me the Jags to cover here. I am buying into that Gardner Minshew hype a little bit. That Jags quarterback did look good in his opening performance against the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Jags defense, I think, can give that Texans O-line some problems. This game could be upset alert here for the Houston Texans, but I'll still have the Texans win 24-20. Seattle +3.5 against Pittsburgh here. You got to think about the number. This is why you take the Seahawks +3.5. If Pittsburgh wins by a field goal, Seattle still covers. This should be a very close game between two good teams, and I think Pittsburgh will bounce back. I say they win very, very narrowly, 30-28, but Seattle still covers this 3.5-point spread. Cincinnati Bengals -1.5 over the San Francisco 49ers. Give me the Bengals to cover this spread. The Bengals made it much more close against Seattle last week than I thought, and San Fran basically got a sloppy win. So that's basically what it's about. San Fran won last week. They won ugly. The Bengals lost last week, but they looked way better in that loss than I thought they would. John Ross, that receiver for the Bengals, Almost had as many yards in Seattle that he did the entirety of last year. Give me the Bengals to win this one 26-21 over the 49ers at home. Green Bay -3 over Minnesota. This is one I'm confident in. Give me the Packers. Okay, so I did bet against Minnesota last week saying that, hey, Kirk Cousins is limited. I was wrong. The Vikings did cover that spread against the Falcons. But Kirk Cousins passed for 98 yards. This is Aaron Rodgers at home against him. I think that Packers defense is much better. Give me Green Bay by a score of 28-20 in this one. Kansas City -7 over the Raiders. This is an easy one, for me at least. I think that this is another one I'm pretty confident in. Chiefs will cover the spread here. I trust Andy Reid Chiefs teams early. Mahomes hasn't lost a step. This is the Raiders. Sure, the Raiders won last week, but this is the Raiders. Kansas City wins this one 34-21. Mahomes looks great again. New Orleans +2 over the Rams. This is a juicy revenge game. The Rams have home field advantage here, but it's much more tepid than the Saints. The Saints have the talent to beat the Rams, and I think they will in an exciting game. I think no matter who wins this game, we could see the kicker playing hero again. And I think it will once again be the Saints kicker, Will Lutz, 34-31 in a good old shootout. The Saints win it, and they cover the spread. Denver +2.5 over Chicago. Broncos will cover the spread. Are the Bears better? Sure they are. But both offenses do look like crap. I trust Denver here because of good old home field advantage in September. That Broncos Mile High field is always hard to play there so early in the season. I think the Broncos will win 17-13 in an ugly game. Philly -2 over Atlanta. Give me the Eagles. The Falcons looked rough in week 1. This seems like the kind of game they'd drop even if it's at home. Eagles 32-28. It's a typical domed arena shootout kind of game. Cleveland -6.5 over the Jets. The Jets lost ugly last week, and now Darnold is out with mono. They adjusted the lines, but I still think the Browns will win by a touchdown plus against this Darnold-less team. I will have Cleveland win 24-16 against Trevor Siemian. Now, in order to make things a bit more interesting, I'm going to keep track of the picks I'm most confident in against the spread and see how that record is compared to my record overall. So my favorite bets this week in no particular order are Tennessee -3, Arizona +13, Seattle +3.5, Green Bay -3, and Kansas City -7. Put those bets in, you're going to make some money, maybe. But anyway, I will see you guys in the next podcast. Bye-bye.